Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 16, In the Hog's Head. Hermione made no mention of Harry giving Defense Against Dark Arts lessons for 2 whole weeks after her original suggestion. Harry's detentions with Umbridge were finally over. He doubted whether the words etched in the back of his hand would ever fade entirely. Ron had had more Quidditch practices and not been shouted at during the last two, and all three of them had managed to vanish their mice in transfiguration. Hermione had actually progressed to vanishing kittens. Before the subject was broached again on a wild, blustery evening at the end of September, when the three of them were sitting in a library looking up potion ingredients for Snape. I was wondering, Hermione said suddenly, whether you'd thought any more about Defense Against the Dark Arts, Harry? Course I have, said Harry grumpily. Can't forget it, can we? With that hag teaching us. I meant the idea Ron and I had. Ron cast her an alarmed, threatening kind of look. She frowned at him. Oh, that's right. The idea I had then. About you teaching us? Harry did not answer at once. He pretended to be pursuing a page of Assaic antivenoms because he did not want to say what was in his mind. He had given the matter a great deal of thought over the past fortnight. Sometimes it seemed an insane idea, just as it had the night Hermione had proposed it. But at others, he found himself thinking about the spells that he would served him best in various encounters with dark creatures and Death Eaters. Found himself, in fact, subconsciously planning lessons. Well, he said slowly, when we could no longer pretend that he could find Assaic antivenoms interesting, yeah, I've thought about it a bit. And? I don't know, said Harry, playing for time. He looked at Ron. I thought it was a good idea from the start, said Ron, who seemed keener to join in on the conversation now that he was sure Harry was not going to start shouting again. Harry shifted uncomfortably in his chair. You did listen to what I said about a load of it being luck, didn't you? Yes, Harry, said Hermione gently. But all the same, there's no point in pretending you're not good at Defense Against Dark Arts, because you are. You were the only person last year who could throw off the Imperious Curse completely. You can produce a Patronus. You can do all sorts of stuff that full-grown wizards can't. Victor always said, Ron looked at her so fast he appeared to have a crick in his neck. Rubbing it, he said, yeah? What did Vicky say? Ho, 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 said Hermione in a bored voice. He said Harry knew how to do stuff even he didn't. And he was in his final year in Durmstrang. Ron was looking at Hermione suspiciously. You're not still in contact with him, are you? So what if I am? Hermione said coolly, though her face was a little pink. I can have a pen pal if He didn't only want to be your pen pal, said Ron accusingly. Hermione shook her head exacerbatingly and ignored Ron, who was continuing to watch her, said to Harry, well, what do you think? Will you teach us? Just you and Ron, yeah? Well, said Hermione, looking a mite anxious again. Well, now, don't fly off the handle again, Harry, please, but I really think we ought to teach anyone who wants to learn. I mean, you're talking about defending ourselves against Voldemort. Oh, don't be pathetic, Ron. It doesn't seem fair that we don't offer the chance to other people. Harry considered this for a moment, then said, yeah, but I doubt anyone wants to be, except you two want to be taught by me. I'm a nutter, remember? Well, I think you might be surprised how many people would be interested in hearing what you've got to say, said Hermione seriously. Look. She leaned towards him. Ron, who was still watching her with a frown on his face, leaned forward to listen too. You know, the first weekend in October is Hogmeade weekend. How would it be if we tell everyone who is interested to meet us in the village so we can talk it over? Well, why do we have to do this out of school? Said Ron. Because, said Hermione, returning to the diagram of a Chinese chomping cabbage, she was saying, I don't think Umbridge would be very happy if she found out what we were up to. Harry had been looking forward to the weekend trip into Hogsmeade, but there was one thing worrying him. Sirius had maintained a stony silence since he appeared in the fire at the beginning of September. Harry knew that he had made him angry by saying he didn't want him to come, but he was still worried from time to time that Sirius might throw caution to the wind and turn up anyways. What we're going to do if the great black dog came bounding up the street towards them in Hogsmeade, perhaps under the nose of Draco Malfoy? Well, you can't blame him for wanting to get out and about, said Ron, when Harry discussed his fears with him and Hermione. I mean, he's been on the run for 2 years, hasn't he? And I know that can't be a laugh, but at least he was free, wasn't he? Now he's just shut up all the time with that ghastly elf. Hermione scowled at Ron, but otherwise ignored the slight on Creature. The trouble is, she said to Harry, until Voldemort, oh, for heaven's sake, Ron, come out into the open. Sirius is going to have to stay hidden, isn't he? I mean, the stupid ministry isn't going to realize Sirius is innocent until they accept that Dumbledore's been telling him the truth all along. And once those fools start catching real Death Eaters again, it'll be obvious Sirius isn't one. I mean, he hasn't even got the Dark Mark, for one thing. I don't reckon he'd be stupid enough to turn up, said Ron bracingly. Dumbledore'd go mad if he did, and Sirius listens to Dumbledore, even if he doesn't like what he hears. When Harry continued to look worried, Hermione said, Listen, Ron, and I have been sounding out people who thought you might want to learn some proper defense against the dark arts. And there are a couple who seem interested. We told them to meet us at Hogsmeade. Right, said Harry vaguely, his mind still on Sirius. Don't worry, Harry, Hermione said quietly. You've got enough on your plate without Sirius, too. She was quite right, of course. He was barely keeping up with his homework, though he was doing much better now that he was no longer spending every evening in detention with Umbridge. Ron was even further behind with his work than Harry, because while they both had Quidditch practice twice a week, Ron also had his prefect duties. However, Hermione, who was taking more subjects than either of them, not only had finished all her homework, but also finding time to knit more elf clothes. Harry had to admit that she was getting much better. It was now almost possible to distinguish between hats and the socks. The morning of the Hogsmeade visit dawned brightly, but windy. After breakfast, they queued up in the front of Filch, who matched their names with a long list of students who had permission from their parents or guardians to visit the village. With a slight pang, Harry remembered that if it hadn't been for Sirius, he would not have been going at all. When Harry reached Filch, the caretaker gave a great sniff as though trying to detect a whiff of something from Harry. Then he gave a curt nod, then set his jowls a-quiver again, and Harry walked on out onto the stone steps and the cold, sunlit day. Why was Filch sniffing you? Asked Ron, as he, Harry, and Hermione set off at a brisk pace down the wide drive to the gates. I suppose he was checking for the smell of dung bombs, said Harry with a laugh. I forgot to tell you. And he recounted the story of sending his letter to Sirius and Filch bursting in seconds later, demanding to see the letter. To his slight surprise, Hermione found this story highly interesting, much more indeed than he himself did. He said he was tipped off you were ordering dung bombs, but who tipped him off? I don't know, said Harry, shrugging. Maybe Malfoy, he'd think it a laugh. They walked between the tall stone pillars topped with winged boars and turned left on the road into the village, the wind whipping past their hair into their eyes. Malfoy, said Hermione skeptically. Well, yes, maybe. And she remained deep into thought all the way into the outskirts of Hogsmeade. Where are we going, anyways? Asked Harry. The Three Broomsticks? Oh, no, said Hermione, coming out her reverie. No, it's packed and really noisy. I've told the others to meet us at The other pub, you know the one. It's not on the main road. I think it's a bit you know, dodgy. But students don't normally go in there, so I don't think we'll be overheard. They walked down the main street past Zonko's Wizarding Joke Shop, where they were not surprised to see Fred, George, and Lee Jordan pass the post office from the owls issued at regular intervals and turned up a side street at the top of which stood a small inn. A battered wood sign hung from a rusty bracket over the door, with a picture on it of a wild boar, severed head, leaking blood onto the white cloth around it. The sign creaked in the wind as they approached. All three of them hesitated outside the door. Well, come on, said Hermione, slightly nervous. She led them all the way inside. It was not at all like the broomsticks, whose large bar gave an impression of gleaming warmth and cleanliness. The Hogshead bar comprised one small, dingy, very dirty room that smelled strongly of something that might have been goats. The bay windows were so encrusted with grime that very little daylight could penetrate the room, which was lit instead with the stubs and candles sitting on rough wooden tables. The floor seemed at first glance to be compressed earth. Though as Harry stepped onto it, he realized that there was stone beneath what seemed to be accumulated filth of centuries. Harry remembered Hagrid mentioning this pub his first year. You get a lot of funny folks in Hogshead, he said, explaining how he won a dragon egg from a hooded stranger there. At the time, Harry had wondered why Hagrid had not found it odd that a stranger kept his face hidden throughout the encounter. Now he saw that keeping your face hidden was something of a fashion in Hogshead. There was a man at the bar whose head was wrapped in dirty gray bandages, though he was still managing to gulp endless glasses of some smoking, fiery substance through a slit over his mouth. Two figures shrouded in hoods sat at a table in one of the windows. Harry might have thought them Dementors, if it had not been for them talking in strong Yorkshire accents. And in a shadowy corner beside the fireplace sat a witch with a thick black veil that fell to her toes. They could see that the tip of her nose, because the veil, it caused the veil to protrude slightly. I don't know about this, Hermione, said Harry, muttering. As they crossed to the bar, he was looking particularly at a heavy veiled witch. Has it occurred to you Umbridge might be under that? Hermione cast an appraising eye over the veiled figure. Umbridge is shorter than that woman, said Hermione quietly. And anyways, even if Umbridge does come in here, there's nothing she can do to stop us, Harry. Because I've double and triple checked the school rules. We are not out of bounds. I specifically asked Professor Flitwick whether students are allowed to come into Hogshead, and he said yes. But he advised me strongly to bring our own glasses. And I've looked up everything I can think of about study groups and homework groups. And they're definitely allowed. I don't think it's a good idea if we parade what we're doing, though. No, said Harry dryly, especially as if not exactly a homework group we're planning, is it? The barman slid towards them out of the back room. He was a grumpy-looking old man with a great deal of long gray hair and beard. He was tall and thin and looked vaguely familiar to Harry. What? He grunted. 3 butterbeers, please, said Hermione. He reached beneath the counter and pulled out 3 very dusty, very dirty bottles, which he slammed onto the bar. 6 sickles, he said. I'll get them, said Harry quickly, passing over the silver. The barman's eye traveled over Harry, resting on a fraction of a second on his scar. Then he turned away and deposited Harry's money into an ancient wooden till, whose drawers slid open automatically to receive it. Harry, Ron, and Hermione retreated to the furthest table from the bar and sat down. Looking around, the man in the dirty gray bandages rapped the counter with his knuckles and received another smoking drink from the barman. You know what? Said Ron, murmured, looking over the bar with enthusiasm. We could order anything we'd like here. I bet that bloke would sell us anything. He wouldn't care. I've always wanted to try fire whiskey. You are a prefect, snarled Hermione. Oh, said Ron, with a smile fading from his face. Yeah. So, who do you say is supposed to be meeting us? Harry asked, wrenching open the dusty top of the butterbeer and taking a swig. Just a couple of people, Hermione repeated, checking her watch and looking anxiously towards the door. I told them to be here about now, and I'm sure they all know where it is. Oh, look, this might be them now. The door of the pub opened. A thick band of dusty lights split the room in two for a moment and then vanished, blocked by the incoming rush of a crowd of people. First came Neville with Dean and Lavender, who were closely followed by Parvati and Padma Patil, which, with Harry's stomach, did a backflip, Cho, and one of her usually giggling girlfriends. Then, on her own, looking very dreamy, she might have walked in by accident, Luna Lovegood. Then Katie Bell, Alicia Spinett, Angelina Johnson, Colin and Dennis Creevy, Ernie McMillan, Justin Finch Fletchley, Hannah Abbott, and a Hufflepuff girl with long plait down her back whose name Harry did not know. 3 Ravenclaw boys who were pretty sure were called Anthony Goldstein, Michael Corner, and Terry Boot. Then Ginny, followed by a tall, skinny boy with an upturned nose whom Harry recognized vaguely as being a member of the Hufflepuff Quidditch team. And, bringing up the rear, Fred and George Weasley with their friend Lee Jordan, all 3 of whom were carrying large paper bags crammed with Zonko's merchandise. A couple of people, said Harry hoarsely to Hermione. A couple of people? Yes, well, the idea seemed quite popular, said Hermione happily. Ron, do you want to pull up some more chairs? The barman had frozen in the act of wiping out a glass with a rag so filthy it looked as though it had never been washed, possibly have never seen the pub so full. Hi, said Fred, reaching at the bar first and counting his companions quickly. Could we have 25 butterbeers, please? The barman glared at him for a moment, then, throwing down his rag irritably, as though he had been interrupted in something very important, he started passing out dusty butterbeers from under the bar. Cheers, said Fred, handing them out. Cough up, everyone. I haven't got enough gold for all of these. Harry watched numbly as a large clattering group took their beers from Fred and rummaged in their robes to find coins. He could not imagine what all of these people had turned up for until this horrible thought occurred to him they might be expecting some kind of speech, at which he rounded on Hermione. What have you been telling people? He said in a low voice. What are they expecting? I told you, they just want to hear what you've got to say, said Hermione smoothly. But Harry continued to look at her so furiously that she added quickly, You don't have to do anything yet. I'll speak to them first. Hi, Harry, said Neville, beaming and taking the opposite seat. Harry tried to smile back, but did not speak. His mouth was exceptionally dry. Cho, who had just smiled at him, sat down at Ron's right. Her friend, who had curly reddish blonde hair, did not smile, but gave Harry a thoroughly mistrustful look, which plainly told him that, given her way, she would not be here at all. In 2s and 3s, a new arrival settled around Harry, Ron, and Hermione, some looking rather excited, others curious, Luna Lovegood gazing dreamily into space. When everybody had pulled their chair, the clatter died down, everyone's eye upon Harry. Said Hermione, her voice slightly higher than the usual one, out of nerves. Well, hi. The group focused its attention on her instead, though eyes continued to dart back regularly to Harry.